you. Please, don't do that. Looking at that Night of the Living Dead, when did you make that movie?
1968.
1968.
Oh, I hate to admit that, but yeah.
Well, that was. Did you expect that movie to become the almost cult film that it did? I mean, people all over the world watch Night of the Living Dead.
No, we didn't. Actually, the film went out and it made most of its money, and it had a pretty good run as a little horror film the year that it was released. And we thought, oh, it's all over. Put it on the shelf, forget about it, try to make another one. And about 2 years after that, it sort of got rediscovered, and it's just been playing ever since.
Yeah,
somewhere.
over and over and over again.
So it's been tremendously gratifying. It's been a lot of fun, and
you know, you've been making movies then for a long time, and why did you choose the horror genre?
The group of us that made it, we were a group of Pittsburghers that all were in one way or another involved in advertising and film production around the city. And the honest answer to that question is the reason we made a horror film was because it was the only kind that we could finance and get off the ground. I happen to love horror. I always have. So you know, I was happy to that we had the opportunity to go out and make a real horror movie. That was thrilling to me. But the reason that we did it initially was because it was the most commercial venture from among several that we had planned. Then, as a filmmaker, you get typecast the same way that an actor does. Sure. So what everyone wants me to do now is make a scary movie. So now it's hard for me to go out and try to sell a comedy or a Western or anything else.
Does that bother you?
It bothers me a little bit, but again, happily, I love two things. I love working with horror, and I feel like I haven't actually made a really scary movie since Night of the Living Dead, and so I'm looking forward to being able to make one. I'm working with Stephen King again.
Oh,
on,
I love him too, yeah.
A novel of his called Pet Cemetery, which is, I think, going to be a
scary
scary
with the cat,
movie.
yeah, it is going to be. It's a frightening novel. But you've worked with him before. You worked with him on Creepshow.
On Creepshow, and now Creepshow 2.
Yeah, which I beg to differ. You have created some rather frightening moments for all of us.
But they're fun. They're silly. They're silly.
Yeah.
You know, they're sort of Halloween-y. They're more fun.
More fun, you say. What is your goal as a filmmaker? Is it to frighten us to death, or is it for us to have fun, or is it for us to say that could happen and walk looking over our shoulders for the rest of the week, which is what I do?
Sorry about that. That's what Steve says, that he gives his nightmares all to you. So, and I think that maybe that's part of it, is to get rid of your nightmares and pass them on to someone else. But it's different with each film. If it's a believable situation, then sure, I'm trying to convince you that this can really happen. If it's an outlandish situation, as a couple of the ones in Creepshow were, then it really is a fun time. You know, it's time to have fun. But I think those of us that love horror and those of us that work in it are always laughing. You know, there's half of us is always laughing. We're having a good time.
Yeah. What frightens you, though? I mean, since you put so many of these things on film.
I don't know, the things that really tend to frighten me have nothing to do with the supernatural or with the things that you would, you know, I'm much more afraid of the bomb and things like that, real things. And I think maybe that's why there's been such a resurgence of horror, is that, you know, the world is so grim again. Yet again, we're going through another one of those periods that maybe people, even though you're scared by a movie, you know all the while that it's a very safe situation that you're in.
Yeah.
So you can go to the theater and let yourself scream and let yourself be terrified by what's going on the screen, but you know that you're going to be able to get up and walk out of there. And so it is escapism. Most people, you know, some people think that, gee, why do you put yourself through that? How can anyone enjoy that? It's an escape.
Yeah, I read every single word just about that Stephen King has ever written and have all the way through, and ask myself at 3 in the morning when I'm afraid to turn out the lights, why did I do that tonight? Yet the next day you start right again. It is a way to escape. Yeah. You know, you did Dawn of the Dead. Was Dawn of the Dead was the very next movie after Night of the Living Dead?
No, I wish it was.
I mean, Dawn of the Dead was just, what, 10 years, maybe? 5 years?
Dawn of the Dead was 79.
Okay.
Yeah. And no, I did 3 films between, actually 4 films between. I forgot one of them there.
Yeah.
And that, I think 9 people in the aggregate went to see.
Oh, okay.
So we don't talk about those too much.
Yeah. Well, Dawn of the Dead, you shot him in Roosevelt Mall.
Yeah.
I love it.
I don't know why they let us how they let us get away with that. We got away with murder, literally.
Yeah, yeah.
It was great fun. It was like having a big electric train set, you know, because we were there all night. And people would leave and we'd come in. And it was like living in a Twilight Zone, or an episode of the Twilight Zone, you know, the one where the mannequins come to life.
Yes, yes.
I would walk through that place alone every once in a while and wonder if those mannequins did move, you know.
When they start going, George, George,
then you worry.
Then you really worry. You know you're in trouble. One of the concerns has been that recently, and I'm going to address this, but I know many people have with you, and they're not finished yet, George, remember. But people have recently put color into the Night of the Living Dead. How do you feel about them changing your work?
Well, it's not just Night of the Living Dead, it's
Many
a
films.
lot of other
Sure,
films.
sure.
And I think that I would feel a little more militant about it if I were, if I had made The Maltese Falcon.
Yes.
If I had made something that I felt
Wonderful
was that
Life.
kind of a, or it's a wonderful, well, yeah, It's a Wonderful Life, but something that really relies on the black and, it's almost, as George Anderson said, it's almost a contradiction in terms to do it, to take a film noir piece and colorize it. It just doesn't make sense. I don't like the idea. I find it a silly idea. I can see that there's some merit in it, in that there are young people today that just will not go out and rent a black and white movie or watch it on television or rent a cassette of it. And so to some extent, it will enable some of these wonderful films to be seen by an audience that would otherwise not see them. As far as I'm concerned, that's the only thing on the plus side of the ledger.
Right.
Other than that, I just find it silly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have to agree with you, Edmund. I mean, it's also a piece of history. This is the way it was done. You
Right.
know, leave it alone. But tonight at midnight, KDKA TV is going to air Night of the Living Dead, so you have a chance to see it. And before and during the movie, they're going to be asking you every once in a while if you want to call in and answer the question, are you for or against colorizing black and white films? And they'll give you the results at a later date. We'll have them for you here, actually, on Monday's Pittsburgh Today. And the question is, are you for or against colorizing the films? George Romero is in Pittsburgh not only because it's Halloween, but he is going to be performing at the Young People's Concert tomorrow at 11 o'clock at Heinz Hall. What kind of performance do you have?
Well, there are some wonderful pieces of music that have been based on scary stories.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. I'm going to be reading a couple of scary stories with the orchestra behind. It's really exciting.
There's oral interpretation with the music in the
It's
background.
just
That
wonderful.
sounds terrific. Well, we'll be up at midnight, folks, watching Night of the Living Dead and thinking of you.
Okay.
Thanks so much for joining us. We
Thanks,
return with
everybody.
news and weather on Pittsburgh Today. Thanks again.